Well, Genesis clearly, a simple, plain reading of the text, declares that the God of the Bible says that he created everything in 6 24-hour days, that was approximately 6,000 years ago. And it lists in the order of creation, first creating the element of time, then space, then the mass or earth, then sequentially going through, and finally what he does is finish his work. Now, what you see there in Genesis chapter 1, in the Hebrew language, it does not say in the beginning, which is nebulous. It says at the beginning in Hebrew. It's a specific point in time when God creates time. He then creates space, the heavens, in order to be, have something, to have a place to put things, and then the earth, which is mass. Now, that's part of the scientific, what's known as the time, space, mass continuum. So, first of all, God starts with a very scientific statement. The more important thing, though, is that in the 6 days, he completes the work. That in 3 days, he finishes the forming of the earth, and then in 3 days, he finishes the filling of the earth. Now, it then says that it was perfect. But because of human sin, as recorded in Genesis chapter 3, it became imperfect, and that the Bible tells us that it has become more and more imperfect since then. That is absolutely consistent with the first and second law of thermodynamics. Evolutionary theory is absolutely contradictory to the laws of thermodynamics, because evolution says that we started simple and became complex without any evidence whatsoever as to where the building blocks came from to begin with, and that by faith you must believe it without any substance or proof of it. It is simply claims. Therefore, evolutionists are simply telling a story that's in contradiction to the various laws of science. It's also in contradiction to, of course, natural process. Other natural laws cannot explain how, that is to say, that evolution cannot explain why we even have consciousness. Why do we have humor, love, altruism, the things that make us, in fact, human? But they cannot explain any of that through an evolutionary process, other than to declare you must believe it by faith.
I find it interesting that for me, I'm a simpleton, but when I first read the Bible, it was something that I didn't have to have a lot of persuading, perhaps, because I was more interested in prophecy and things that were foretold thousands of years ago that had fulfillment later on. Those are the things where I found God to be very reliable. But people do need persuading on this issue, and it's such a big issue, and some might say, well, does it really matter if we evolved or we were created? What would you say to that? Does it really matter?
Well, it is really very important. Now, we will never, ever make it a salvation issue. So whether you believe that God does exist and then use an evolutionary process, or that he did create it whole and complete, as the Bible records, is not the salvation issue. But it is absolutely critical to the gospel, because if God used an evolutionary process over millions and billions of years, it would mean that God is not omnipotent, he's not omniscient, he is not smart enough to bring it into existence whole and complete. He's not powerful enough to bring it into existence whole and complete. That he is, in fact, misleading us, because in the Bible he said, I did create it in 6 literal 24-hour days. And Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11 would be an excellent proof text for that, though there are certainly many others, such as Jesus saying that Adam and Eve were there at the beginning. He does not say they came along millions of years later. And you would be saying that God cannot save a remnant. You are saying that God has a time during which there was no witness, but in Romans chapter 1, Paul tells us that there has always been a witness since the time of the creation. Most importantly, however, if the earth were millions and billions of years old, then death of nephesh organisms would have occurred prior to the sin of Adam, and that would negate Romans 5:12, 1 Corinthians 15, and so forth.
Yeah.
And it is only a recent creation, which started whole and complete, but then became flawed through human sin, that allows us to understand how, in fact, one sinless man, Jesus Christ, died on a cross and atoned for the sins of the world. Because if death existed before Adam, then the death of Jesus on the cross is a meaningless thing, and that his death cannot save us.
Yeah.
So while it's not the salvation issue, it is nonetheless critical to the gospel.
Stay tuned to Revelation. Don't touch that dial, as some would say. And thank you very much for watching. Good night and God bless you.